Thank you.
Spot on time. How about that? I'll try and stick to that. So yes, although I'm a board member of Solar, we are actually covering both co-ops here, and Mike and his colleagues will be telling us in more detail about what WeSet have been up to. Next slide, please, Sam. So in terms of community funding, being cooperatives, we follow the co-op principles. And so some of you will know, Principle 7 is all about concern for community. That's where this idea of providing community benefit comes from. There's also in that one something on sustainability. There's a couple of others that are relevant as well. So number 5 is about education and training and sharing information. That could be about renewables or about the benefits of cooperatives. And then just being a cooperative, we like to work cooperatively, so solar and wind, but we cooperate with organisations like WeSet and Low Carbon Hub as well. That helps us decide what sorts of things we're looking to fund. When we're choosing particular projects or beneficiaries, we are looking for impact. We want to make a difference. And there's sort of 2 strands to that. One is on climate change, which could be that education and awareness, what kind of problems and solutions there are. And it could be about actually projects designed to reduce carbon dioxide emissions, the greenhouse gases. And the second thread of impact we like is being generators. We quite like to help tackle fuel poverty. Slide, please, Sam. So quite a bit of our community benefit actually goes locally. Both co-ops pay a set amount each year to WeSet. They're going to tell us all about it. I'll just tell you the numbers there. So for their core funding activities, not for any particular project, Solar paid £25,000 for 2021 and Wind paid £7,500, which is up £500 on the year before. The board voted to increase that. Next, please. So in addition to the payments to WeSet, Westmill Solar votes, as you've just approved at the AGM, some of its surpluses towards further community funding activities. And I have a typo on this slide because my numbers don't agree with Andrew's. Come back to it. So we have this sort of rule of thumb for the last few years. It's related to the level of interest being declared on members' shares. So that if we had a bad year, we wouldn't be over-committed with a sort of fixed amount promised for community funding. It goes up and down in step. So for every £80 that's declared as interest on members' shares, we also allocate £20 to be spent on community funding. And for 2021, that gave us 101,000, not 108. It's 101,018. I just deleted the wrong digits. That's down on last year because, as we've heard, the members' share interest is lower because of the issues with the transformer. So that 101,000 includes the 25,000. That's our kind of first slice that goes off to WeSet. Next slide, please. So in terms of what do we mean by community, we take this sort of layered approach. There's already been a bit in the chat there, you'll see. So most of our money is focused either locally or in our region. So local has been WeSet, particularly, things going on site. And in some years, some of the villages that are sort of closer to us on our doorstep. But then a fair chunk of the money goes in what we call our region. In the early years, that was our county, Oxfordshire. And a few years ago at AGM, we got a very clear steer from members to say, you need to look west more, do more around Swindon. So we're now operating in Oxfordshire and this 25-mile circle radius around the site. So the community grants, for example, the eligibility is in that area. We usually do 1 or 2 things at a national level with, say, Energy for All. We've got something in the current year, or with Community Energy England, which was the previous year, but we didn't have one in 2021. And then the global international level, we pay £5,000 a year to Renewable World. And there is a video coming up in the break from them, amongst all the other things you can have a look at. Again, we had a bit of comment in the chat, so you can read back through. Right, so next slide, please. I'm going to pick on the two main areas of community funding. And these are two where particularly we like the members to get involved. Give us your ideas and suggestions and tell the relevant organisations that they should be applying for these things. The first one is these free energy audits for community buildings. So we awarded 7,500 in 2021. So as I've said, that would be within our region, Oxfordshire, or that 25-mile circle. And the map here, this is from Low Carbon Hub's People's Power Station. And you can select, there's a filter where you can ask it to show all the community building energy audits that have been funded by Westmill Solar. I think that includes some schools that we provided funding for in past years as well. So you can see we've fallen outside Oxfordshire. This is over all the years, not just in 2021. But there's loads, we're having a good impact there. And of course, once these buildings like village halls and so on have got those recommendations, they can be applying to us through the community grants for some money to help take the measures that has been awarded, like putting solar panels on the roof, for example. So there at the bottom of the page is the link to our community funding page on the website. There's a form, you can download it and fill it in if you think there's a building that ought to be getting one of these, or of course you can point that out to the organising committee of the village hall or the sports club, whatever it is. Okay, next slide, please. The community grants scheme, we really do like members to help us publicise this. So if you're involved with another organisation, then by all means, you know, put in an application. But you probably know all sorts of good causes and projects, not-for-profit groups who are doing something that you think we ought to be at least considering funding. And please do point them to that link on our website so that they can download the forms. It's up to £5,000 each. It's a fairly straightforward form. We've worked hard on making the guidance easy, and there's a simpler form if it's only up to £1,000 as well. So even a small volunteer-run organisation should be able to apply, and they can always ask Sam for some help if there's a bit of confusion. Okay, so for the community grants, we did also say Energy for All and Community Energy England are kind of special cases that we'd let them apply, even though they're not technically local. They didn't do in 2021, but they're on our list. So the sorts of things we funded, village halls, there were, no, back a page. Getting ahead of himself. In the village halls, we had two where we're paying to help put solar panels on the roof, and one where there's an air-to-air heat pump going in for efficient heating of a new foyer. The picture there is Brinkworth Village Hall, where they're making improvements to improve the energy efficiency of the building. We also pick up on some that are to do with that education, training, awareness kind of principle, where that picture there is Maymessy, a community interest company that is, it's a cookery school, but it's much more than that. It's about well-being. They work a lot with disadvantaged groups, young people, helping them to get skills in some horticulture. So there's some funding for raised vegetable beds, so they're growing local produce and to be used in their cookery school, and also training up some of these youngsters in those skills. The bus is West Oxfordshire Community Transport. They, well, yeah, that's better than private fossil fuel cars anyway. In the long term, they'd like to be running on electric buses. So we funded some research so that they can look into the environmental, financial, social implications of trying to get to an all-electric fleet. And they have plans to share that widely, so they're well connected with community transport around the country. That's going to be interesting reading when they're done. And we work a lot with community groups. So that last picture is Sustainable Wantage. So if we move to the next slide, I'll tell you a bit more about them. So they're a community action group, work a lot with CAGs in Oxfordshire. They'd set up a community larder, and we're funding them for a year from 1st of September to help that really get permanently established. So this is an initiative working with local low-income residents. They can pay an individual or a family subscription each week, and that allows them to pick up a set number of food items from the larder on a Friday afternoon. One of the things I love about Wantage is they know exactly what their impact is. They collect all sorts of data. So the food bank in the equivalent period up to 13th of May, when they gave us the numbers, had something like 2 tons of surplus food redistributed. The food community larder is well over 16 tons of surplus food. There's a quote there from a member of the larder, so someone who's using that service. We also had a great testimonial from one of the volunteers who talked about what it had done for her sort of social involvement and self-esteem. It's a great project. We also like the fact that we're getting good value for our funding because there's so much wraparound stuff. They use this as a point of contact to refer people who need it to energy saving advice. They run related events like cookery classes, how to use seasonal surpluses, or even flexible recipes or recipes that can be used with things that happen to be a lot of in the larder this week. So they've really thought through that kind of stuff. Their number of members has gone up from 90 to 138, as at a couple of weeks ago anyway. So, you know, it's going great guns, and they're planning all sorts of things around it. And in terms of getting impact for our community funding, I think this is one of the examples. Just brilliant. Okay, so talking of just brilliant, this is where I hand over to Mike and his team from Reset. I'll pop up again with a few closing comments, and then hopefully we'll have time for questions on the whole of this community funding. But I'll let Mike and Emma entertain us now.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed, Nina. Next slide, please. Great. So this time last year, we were still in the middle of making decisions about the Westmill Centre, which we decided was not something that we could move ahead with. So that ultimately gives us space to do other things. Coming out of the COVID epidemic means we have funds. We are interested in ideas and taking other things forward. We will report obviously on things that we've been doing. But at the moment that project is on hold, and we'll need significant third-party funding to reopen that project. So just to give you be clear about that project. Next slide, please. So thanks again to all the trustees for their work this year, sticking with our agendas. So thanks to all those. Next slide, please. And it's with sadness that I say thank you very much, Sarah. Sarah, I believe you're present at the moment on the call, which is super. Sarah is decided to stand down as a trustee, but she's been great from WeSet and our community energy point of view. She joined WeSet as a swell coordinator, was then the volunteer coordinator, helped on the Westmill Centre subgroup, and currently her role is as a trustee is overseeing the volunteers and visitors role, and she's also a guide. So Sarah, I know we can't quite have the interaction that we would normally have, but thank you very much. Really very helpful, and wish you well on other things. I know you're going to stay in touch, of course, still a member and everything, which is super. But thank you, Sarah.
She also is now a member of ethics as well. So
yes, well, indeed. No, good point. But yes, yes, we're sort of parting. Well, Westmill Solar is parting ways with ethics. So yeah, so great. Thanks. And of course, we have a lot of supporting volunteers. Many are on the call as well. You know, I know so thank you to Chris, who looks after our website, and the education team, and particularly the guides who turn out and really are most of the time the faces of Westmill Wind Farm, Westmill Solar Co-op, WeSet itself, and what the general public sees. So you know, I know Emily particularly, and it's not on the call at the moment, but there's done a lot of sort of work, and great to see some new names here, as well as some familiar ones. I know Mike and is on the call. Thank you, Rodney. You're on the call too, and there are others as well. So, and David, thank you very much indeed for your time. We really appreciate that. And you know, you volunteer, and the enthusiasm, that's just great. So just a thorough thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, we have two officers, which we're very pleased with, Emma and Tom. I'm going to hand over to Emma to talk more about the education thing. Tom's done the recording, which we'll play during the break, about our visits, and we'll make that more available as well afterwards. But you know, the visit program continues apace, and we've reopened to face-to-face visits since the last time we spoke. Okay, next slide, please. And just like to hand over to Emma, our education in charge of education, to talk through what exciting things she's been up to. Emma.
Hello, my name's Emma Arnold and I'm the Education Officer for Reset. I just wanted to talk a little bit about what we've been up to in 2021 and also at the beginning of this year, because a lot has been happening. This slide shows you some of what we've been doing on our website and in the background with our education pack, which has been a big part of our work, particularly during the last 2 years when we've been less able to get out and visit schools and get on site with schools as well. We now have 9 lesson packs available on our website, and the great thing about those is they're available obviously to our target audience within the sort of 25-mile radius, but they're also available to anybody around the world really who wants to access these, and that's meant that we're able to sort of advertise those more widely. We started off focusing on Westmill, the story of Westmill and wind and solar, and we've moved on and done some collaborative work with Lock Hydro, and those lessons are also up there. During the last 2 years, I added to those lessons video lessons as well, because there was a certain call for those, particularly for schools who were teaching remotely, larger groups, and wanted to be able to sort of play a full narrated video lesson. So the packs include a presentation, a full delivery guide, and that's aimed not only at teachers but at homeschoolers and group leaders as well. There's a lesson plan which complies with all the Ofsted standards, and then there's a series of worksheets and potential home worksheets, extension activities that link to those lessons. So we've tried to make them as comprehensive as possible. Next slide, please. We've also added to those something which is possibly a little bit less academic, and that's a series of activity sheets. Again, like our lessons, they appeal to Key Stage 2, Key Stage 3 year groups, and these activity sheets can be downloaded, but also, as with the worksheets and the lessons, I'm trying to make sure everything is digitally fillable, so everything can be done online with no need to print, as obviously that's a big part of what we're doing, is trying to stress the sustainability element of our work packs. And the activity sheets go through a range of different things, different focus areas, and I'm able to tailor those as well, specifically for certain schools' requirements. Next slide, please. I have recently, well, in the last year and a half, been able to start going out intermittently again. And one of the visits that I did last year was actually not Key Stage 2, Key Stage 3, but to older year groups. And that was to the 2 Swindon colleges. And that was fantastic for me. I'm based in Highworth, so Swindon's very local, but it also was a little bit of outreach to groups we potentially haven't spoken to that much before. It was really good. It was done over 2 days on the 2 different campus sites, and it enabled me to give focus talks to environmental science groups, but also I talked to arts groups and various and geography groups, and was able to sort of tailor specific talks to them. And then I had groups coming around and seeing the displays during their break times and asking questions. So that went really well, and was a really nice start, sort of getting back out and about. Next slide, please. Another collaboration that we had last year was with Moss to a Flame, and we were a project partner of theirs. This was a sort of event run by the Art and Energy Collective, who are based in Plymouth, and they got in touch with us, and originally their idea was to take this installation piece up to COP26, and they were going to literally stop en route as they made their way up to Glasgow. Now, obviously, with all the restrictions that happened, they were unable to do this. So we were a virtual landing point for them. And as part of that, we got funding through them, through the Arts Council, to run an event and also to do some outreach in schools specifically around their project. And their project was looking at biodiversity, specifically focusing on moths, as a sort of means of illustrating some of the issues linked to climate change. And we got involved with this by helping them with their moth making scheme, whereby children, adults across the country were making moths out of recycled milk bottles, and also recording messages of hope and sending those to COP26, and they all went up as part of the installation in the Botanic Gardens. But for our part, we ran an event in September, which was lovely. It was a small scale open day. We were restricted in numbers, but we had people coming from as far afield as sort of London, which was a huge surprise. We had a family from Birmingham whose son's 4th birthday surprise was to come and be with us because he's obsessed with turbines and loved to see the solar panels. So it was a really lovely event, and we held guiding on that day as well as running a sort of variety of different sort of crafting activities, all linked to sustainability and climate change. Next slide, please. We also took part in the From the Ground Up exhibition at the Old Fire Station in Oxford, and that was another nice opportunity to share what we're doing and sort of start to try and attract attention back to the site and getting visits booked in. Next slide, please. I've done collaborations as well, or I've been fortunate enough to do collaborations as well as with Osney Lock Hydro, with NG Superhub Oxford, creating materials for them for their education outreach, and we are linking through our site with them. It's nice to have that opportunity to be collaborative and to share each other's work. It's another way of sort of getting out what we're doing to schools, but also we're able to share what's being done in the area. Next slide, please. Lastly, in terms of collaborations for last year, we sort of reinvigorated our relationship with Farmer Gals. They're now running a visit day where they start off at their centre and they talk about energy and electricity, and then as part of that day they bring the school groups to Westmill. So we had one trip at the end of last year, and we've now got forthcoming trips this year, and I've tailored a sort of visit specifically to the age groups that come and see them, with activity sheets that are linked to that and activities they can do whilst they're at the site. So that's been really nice to do, and as I said, we've got further trips coming up with them this year. In terms of this year's work, it's really nice to have been able to go back into schools. It's something that's really picking up now, and I've been able to run activities and give talks in schools. And just having that sort of face-to-face link has made a huge difference. Another thing I've been able to do is take part in the Earth Summit this year, which has just recently happened up at Coles Hill, run by the National Trust, and we had a sort of stand and we ran activities and talked about wind and solar, and we had the turbines in the background, which was really helpful, and several school groups came around to that. It was a 3-day event, and there is another of those forthcoming for families in July. I've also sort of been able to do a little bit more collaborative work, and it's been really exciting for me recently to work with local NG Oxfordshire, producing educational materials for them, and hopefully they will be ready to go into schools the next academic year. So it's been hugely busy, and the fact that things are picking up and being able to enable us to go back into schools has been a huge bonus. However, I don't underestimate the fact that we had to tailor things for the last couple of years and put a lot online, because what that's enabled us to do is have a much broader reach. And I've now got schools who have fed back, who are using our materials, you know, from much further afield, which is really satisfying. It's nice to know that they know about us as a hub for renewable community energy. So that's all for me. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be doing all of this.
Thank you very much, Emma. Yeah, so just a slide here to say, do get involved. You've got thoughts about how WeSet should be spending the funds that we have. Just great to hear from you. Go go to our website if you want to schedule a bespoke site tour, but there are scheduled ones particularly designed so that individuals or small groups can come along and at set times. But do get involved. And I'm delighted to say we've had various new guides join us this year, but we're always keen to talk to others who will be interested in doing it. So I'd like to thank you for your funding for WeSet. It's always appreciated, and as you can see, there's a good example there of Emma, what she does and the good work she does. And Tom's video will be that talks about visits will be played during the break. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Can we have the final slide, please, Sam? Thanks. So remember, this is a cooperative. We're run by our members. You should get involved. So watch out for those community buildings that might benefit from having a free energy audit. Watch out for those good causes and organisations that ought to be applying for one of our community grants. Please do help us spread the word on those. If you're particularly keen, or if you've got lots of ideas, then come and join our community grants panel. And Tom's already given a shout out. I'll say again, though, thank you to Bob and Julia and Saskia and Lars for putting in the time on recommending to the board who those grants should go to for the last couple of years. Actually, if you've got loads of ideas about community funding, then go a step further and tell us you want to be on the board. Now there's a challenge. Could be you up here next year. You can, as always, send us suggestions. It's the usual email address. And if you put community funding in the subject line, please, that just helps it get to the right place. As Mike said, Tom, talking about the WeSet visits and also some other images and slides will be on display in the tea break. If you keep your Zoom running, you'll see a bit more about who's been using our community funds. Okay, right, we do have a small number of minutes for questions. And I know that one came in beforehand, which was a question for WeSet. If people want to dig down into the numbers a bit more, Mike, are your accounts available? Can they get those online somewhere?
Yeah, we're a registered charity, so our accounts for up to 2021 are on the Charity Commission website. We have to publish those. We haven't finalised our ones for the last for 2020 are up on the website. We haven't quite finalised our ones for 2021. It's the agenda for the meeting, our WeSet meeting next week, but we will share those. We will share those.
That's great for those who particularly want to see that kind of detail. You can see
definitely, it is definitely available. Yeah.
Okay. Any more questions? I'm trying to look at two places at once. Sam,
we've got one for Emma, which was just could you repeat, just go back and repeat what you said about the National Trust event that was taking next month, happening next month?
Yes, absolutely. I'm just typing up a link for tickets in the chat there. It's the 3rd of July at Coles Hill. It's run by a company called Boxed Up Events, and ticket and information is through their site, but there are also posters going up around the area, and I think it will also probably be on the National Trust site linked to Coles Hill, but that's the 3rd of July, and I'll put that in the chat now.
So a question that came in just to the...
Sorry, Nina. Mike was just going to add to that, add to that point.
I was going to say just about, there was a comment about the lovely image of the WeSet poster, which actually Emma painted, which is absolutely super. And I think we should make it more available to everybody. There's no intention not to. In fact, we probably should be selling copies of it, so we'll do that.
Sorry, I just picked up a question which only came to the panelists. It didn't go to everybody, but Denise Oakley asked how much community funding. I think Tom earlier mentioned £600,000. That is the total over the last 10 years since solar has existed. Is that right, Tom?
Yeah, and a bit even from wind before then, but it's an aggregate total since both co-ops have started, not something that's just gone out in the last 12 months.
No, exactly. But it gives you a feel for how much we've done over the last 10 years, and there's more to come. Thank you for supporting that.
There's one more question again for Emma. Do you have any comments on the relative benefits of in-person events and videos for educational benefit, and what are the additional benefits of potentially having those sort of things on site, as it were?
I do, absolutely. Thank you for that question. It's just been really notable for me because with my other work hat on, I also go into schools, how being in person has made linking with schools much easier. So contacts that I was battling to get responses from during the lockdowns, and I know part of that was because teachers were so busy, have been much more forthcoming once I've been able to sort of get in there and meet people. So being involved with events, there was another event actually that I didn't mention, the Festival of Tomorrow that we did in Swindon at the beginning of this year, and making contacts face to face has actually made a big difference in terms of sort of response and ongoing relationship. But having the videos has been fantastic because, as I said, when I've had inquiries from schools further afield, I've been able to sort of signpost them to something. And I know it will be mentioned in Tom's video, but we've also been able to offer virtual tours. And so that's been another sort of a huge benefit, I think, from having the sort of dual aspect of presentation. I hope that answers your question.
I think it does.
Thanks, Emma, that's great. We are now at the end of our time slot, and we've got a fantastic key speaker coming up. So I don't want us to overrun into that. But thank you again, Reset. Thank you, everybody else. And keep those questions coming in. We'll pick up any unanswered ones and get responses out afterwards. Right, thank you. I will hand over to whoever's chairing the next bit. Is that right?
Well,
thank you, Nina.